All right, let's get started. Thanks to all our attendees for joining us tonight. I'd like to start off by introducing myself and our guest speakers for today. I'm Irvin Rivero, the Beneficial Electrification Associate. And then there's our guest speaker, Matt Landre, who's the president of Willow Glen Electric. And then we also have Vanessa Shin from Peninsula Clean Energy, who is their community outreach specialist. And then here's a little bit about Actera. So we are a nonprofit organization based in Palo Alto, and our mission is to bring people together to create local solutions for a healthy planet. We've been around since 1970, the first Earth Day, and our focus is in addressing climate change while advancing equity. And then we also serve the 9 counties around the San Francisco Bay Area. And the objective for tonight is to inform and support new or future EV buyers about charging and charging their EVs at home or in the public. And then just some best practices for Zoom. Please stay muted during the presentation. This meeting is being recorded, so you may leave your camera on or off, whatever you please. Please put questions in the chat and we'll try to answer them. And then before we begin, I'd like to introduce and thank our presenting sponsor, Peninsula Clean Energy. They're San Mateo County's official electricity provider. By providing cleaner energy at lower rates, Peninsula Clean Energy is an essential part of the fight against climate change in our communities. Peninsula Clean Energy provides one of our region's most generous grant programs for income qualifying individuals who live in San Mateo County or Los Banos. We will learn about their programs in detail later in the presentation. But now I'd like to introduce Matt Landre, our EV charger expert from Willow Glen Electric.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Irvin. Here, I'm going to request remote control. There we go. And I know that Irvin just said best practice is to put your microphone on mute. But I'm looking at the number of participants and there's not that many today, which is actually kind of fun. And I would actually encourage you to put your microphone on not mute, unmute your microphone so that we could maybe even have a conversation about this. So that if I say something and you agree with it, but you'd like to hear more, you could say, hey, I like that. Let's expand on that. Or Matt, you're full of garbage on that. And here's why. I'd love to hear your perspective on what's happening, or if you have questions on what I'm showing. With this few people on here, could be fun to have a little bit more of a dialogue with this. So again, I'm Matt Landre, a president of Willow Glen Electric. Willow Glen Electric was founded by my dad and my uncle about 35 years ago in San Jose, and we have installed 5,000 plus, close to 6,000 home EV chargers for our customers around the greater Bay Area, stretching from as north as San Francisco, as south as Hollister, over to Santa Cruz, up to Livermore, San Ramon, Danville area. But the heart of our business is, as you can see, kind of centered right on Peninsula, right where Actera is based. Ton of work in Palo Alto and the surrounding areas, San Jose, Campbell, everywhere. So let's see, back to here since I'm controlling. And early last year, our company actually got acquired. So my parents got to retire from the company. I got to take over as president, and we were acquired by a company called Q-Merit. If you look at the lower corner of our screen, you'll see we are basically EV Experts, a division of Willow Glen Electric. EV Experts was started by us, 5 or 6 years ago, and we were acquired by a company called Q-Merit. So we're powered by Q-Merit now. And Q-Merit is the recommended installer for a number of electric vehicle brands out there. Pretty much every brand on here has a signed contract with Q-Merit for Q-Merit to be the national installation team. And they have since acquired about 8 of the leading EV installers around the country, from Florida to Boston to LA area. And we are the local base right here. So we're working with Chevy and Jaguar, Rivian, Lucid, Mercedes, Porsche, BMW, Polestar, GM, everybody on there, and then some. It's a pretty fun opportunity for our company and our electricians. So there are a lot of good benefits of EVs, and I think can be summed up into these 5 bullet points right here. There's an enjoyable driving experience with it. My wife learned about that a couple of years ago. She drives a Honda Pilot, and she drove my Model 3 when she was pregnant 1 year. And we were doing a road trip, and she didn't think much about driving the Model 3 because she didn't want to throw up. But then when she got home and hopped into the SUV that she was driving, she finally realized what the difference was. And she thought, okay, I see the appeal of the instant response and good driving experience. There's significantly lower maintenance with electric vehicles as well. So I drive a Tesla Model 3. I've had it for close to 5 years. I just crossed 100,000 miles with my vehicle, and I have basically replaced the tires a couple of times. I've put in very minor, almost no work into the vehicle. So 100,000 miles with no cost. Zero emissions with electric vehicles when fueled from renewable energy sources. There's significantly lower fuel costs, depending on when and how you charge. And another awesome benefit that I no longer have, and it breaks my heart every day, is the HOV lane. So if you buy a new electric vehicle, sign up for that, and I can watch you drive past in the HOV lane. They usually last 3 or 4 years. So EV fuel costs are significantly less than gas. Even expensive electricity is cheaper than gas. So for EV mileage, you typically will get about 3 miles per kilowatt hour of energy. And Peninsula Clean Energy's rate is about 30 cents per kilowatt hour. So that's only costing about 10 cents a mile for charging. Typical PG&E EV night charging is about 24 cents a kilowatt hour. It's about 8 cents a kilo, or about 8 cents per mile. While gas, you could drop down to the bottom bullet point right there, is at $6 a gallon. So if your car gets 25 miles per gallon and you're paying about $6 a gallon, that's 24 cents a mile. So, literally 3 times the cost of electricity in your house. Now, EV fuel costs, the EV mileage is affected by the temperature outside. If you're heating or cooling the car, it can use more power. Your speed, kind of reverse of a normal car, you actually get worse mileage on the freeway compared to city driving. In city driving, it's pretty efficient, while gas-powered cars, ICE stands for internal combustion engine, is the opposite. You get better mileage on the freeway. EV mileage is also affected by aerodynamics, which is one reason why the Tesla Cybertruck is so, some people would say ugly. They designed it to be as efficient and aerodynamic as possible with that. And the last thing that affects mileage is your lead foot. I had a lot of fun when I first got my electric vehicle driving responsibly fast out there, but I found that it was actually over time, it's almost more fun to not have a lead foot and to responsibly drive and see how low your mileage can get. I actually drove from San Jose to Palo Alto today for some walkthroughs. And at one point I was getting as low as about 210 or so watt hours per mile, which is a pretty efficient driving rate. So there are 3 different charging levels. But yeah, there's the level 1, there's level 2, and there's, I call it level 3. Some people call it the DC fast charging level. But level 1 is your typical plug in your house. Can you see my mouse on the screen? Okay, so this is the standard plug, and that is a level 1 charger, 120 volt, 20 amp receptacle. Typically is on a 15 amp circuit, 15 or 20 amp circuit, but this plug is 15 amps. And this will provide about 1.4 kilowatts of energy per hour of charge. You can think of kilowatts almost like a gallon of gas. My Tesla Model 3 is a 75 gallon tank. And if I was fueling off this plug right here, I'd be refueling my 75 gallon tank at about 1.5 gallons per hour. So this would take a long time, but it surprisingly actually is pretty reasonable if you don't drive that much, because you're typically not charging your car from 0 to 100%. So 10 hours of charging would get you 20 to 50 miles of driving range, which is greater than the average daily commute. So there's a chance that would work for you. Level 2 is faster. This is typically a 240 volt, 208 or 240 volt receptacle or hardwired electric vehicle charger. And this one will provide anywhere from 5 miles per hour up to 44 miles per hour, depending on how fast or slow, how efficient your vehicle is, and how fast your circuit is. So like this 5 miles per hour would be the slowest charge possible for like an F-150 Lightning coming off a 240 volt 15 amp circuit, while 44 miles per hour is about the most efficient vehicle you would drive, which is, I think, Model 3 is one of the most efficient vehicles. And the 60 amp circuit provides 11.5 kilowatts of power. So you're getting about 44 miles of driving range per hour of charge. So that's level 2. Level 3 is the fastest charging method, and this can give you up to 1,000 miles of driving range per hour of charge. Very briefly, if on longer road trips in my vehicle, if my car's down to 5 or 10% when I pull into one of the V3 Tesla superchargers, for a very brief and amazing period of time, I get to look at the screen and see that I'm charging at 1,000 plus miles per hour. But as the battery fills up with energy, it starts to charge slower to protect the longevity of the battery. So these fast chargers could provide up to 80% charge in as little as 20 to 30 minutes. But older EVs often do not support the fast level 3 DC charging. And for chargers, sometimes people, if they don't know a lot about home charging, I actually stopped at a customer site earlier today and I asked them, how fast of a charger were you guys looking to get? It's like, I don't know, something that would charge in maybe 45 minutes or so. And I just kind of smiled and explained to him that that is not something that we could do, and actually looked at the business's switchgear and told them that the big switchgear for this big office building, for all the manufacturing space they had, that all of the power they had going into their building after doing a couple of calculations was identical to as much power as one Tesla supercharger would need. So when you look at those sites out there that have 30 to 50 Tesla superchargers, those have ungodly amounts of power flowing into them. So it's not something that you'll typically see at a house, not something you'll typically see at a business even. Those are very specialty chargers. So public charging networks for these include ChargePoint, EVgo, Electrify America, and Tesla. Like I said, the Tesla V3, the version 3 supercharger provides up to 250 kilowatts of power at their peak. Electrify America will actually provide up to 350 kilowatts of power at their peak. These are the 350 kilowatt Electrify America stations. And there's not too many vehicles right now that will take power, or that will take that much power. Now, the Lucid is one of the few. And I happened to meet the CEO of their company about a year and a half ago at their Valley Fair opening, when they opened up one of their showrooms down there. And he told me a story of them bringing their one of their prototype Lucid vehicles to the very first 350 kilowatt charger up in Livermore. Like, before any vehicle could really handle this, they plugged it in. He said within 10 minutes, Lucid headquarters got a call from Electrify America congratulating them on bringing their car over for charging over there, which was pretty neat, because Electrify America knew that they were about the only company that could possibly have a vehicle that could support that. But more and more vehicles are starting to charge at faster rates, close to that. So when you hear let me go back one slide. So when you hear 250 kilowatts and 350 kilowatts and things like that, sometimes it's really hard to wrap our mind around how much power that is. But 350 kilowatt is equal to 350,000 watts of power. So I know back in the day when all light bulbs were 60 watts of power, 350,000 watts would power 5,833 inefficient 60-watt light bulbs. If you're powering a efficient 10-watt LED lights these days, you'd be powering 30,000 lights out there with one charger's speed. So for home charging, as great as the DC fast chargers are, it would be a royal pain in the butt to deal with those on a daily basis and have that be your only source of charging. So if at all possible, having a home charger is a fantastic thing for charging. And to determine how fast of a charge, I'll get into the kind of the details later, but let's say your average daily commute's 30 miles round trip. Charging costs from PG&E, about 24 cents a kilowatt hour, requires about 10 kilowatt hours of energy for charging the vehicle. You would recharge these 30 miles in about 7 hours on that slow level 1 charger, or about an hour and a half on the faster level 2 charger. It would cost you about $2.40. This compares to about $6.66 a day for fuel from for charging, or for not charging, for refueling your ICE car. So I know this is the month of Halloween, but $6.66 number on there. Sorry, what's that?
You probably know almost all this. I don't really, so I haven't mastered. So.
At some point, do you?
Okay, here we go. So anyways, let's stick away from $6.66. EV charging is much better. So for a 200-mile trip, this would cost you about $16 for that trip, and versus about $45 for the internal combustion engine. So you'd be saving almost $30, every time you drive 200 miles with electric vehicle. So for installing a home level 2 EV charger, well, one of the most important things that we do is about the first thing that we do, and that's an electrical load calculation for the house to determine the safe charger size. We take into account the square footage of the house, how big the electrical system is going in the house, what larger appliances there are inside the house, and with a National Electrical Code approved calculation, it kind of spits out a number at the very end for what the existing peak electrical load of the home would be. And the difference from that existing peak load to the rated ampacity of the house is how fast of an EV charger we can safely install in the house. So after we figure that out, then we determine kind of where the charger should be. And ideally, we'd put the charger near the car's charge port. This is a little logo showing where Tesla recommends putting a charger, anywhere from the front over here, because the charge port for the Tesla is in the rear driver's corner over here. So they want to make sure their charging cable is long enough to stretch there. And then after that, we install the wiring and the conduit, we pull a city permit and inspection, and get the inspection, and that goes into the home charger. Now for the charging speed, I did a study last year of all of it. I think it was near the end of last year when I looked to see how fast the chargers were that we were installing were. And almost at that point, no charger we installed was over 70 amps per house. Actually, we installed a couple chargers over 70 amps this year because some vehicles are starting to come out that can accommodate 70, 80, 90, 100 amp home circuits. But typically there's not many houses that can actually support that. But at the time, about a third of the installations were with 60 amps, about 40% were with 50 amp circuits. And then still, what is that, 13, 15, about 25% of charges were 40 amps or below. A lot of these higher amperage circuits, don't look at this and think, oh, look at that, 80% of, or 75% of houses out there can handle 15, 60 amp circuits. A lot of the work for these required panel upgrades or load management device, automatic intelligent load management devices to enable this. I think I have a line that's not on here. But there's a lot of spots where we'll need to upgrade the home's electrical infrastructure to safely support a fast EV charger. Now, there are lots of charger brands available. Universal chargers include ChargePoint, Wallbox, Bosch, Flow, or any of the car branded chargers. Tesla can charge from these universal chargers, and anything with a J1772 plug on them can charge a Tesla, because Tesla includes an adapter with every vehicle. And then for charger lengths, 25-foot cords are the longest allowed by the National Electrical Code. So if it has to be longer than 25 feet, try to park closer. It's not really safe to have a charging cable that's much longer than that, or using the extensions. Maybe use an extension on a very temporary weekend trip, but for permanent charging, 25 feet should be about the max. Now, if you're asking about costs for this, again, at this point last year when I did the study, I found that the average installation cost was about $3,200 for our chargers, which is definitely on the higher side with this. But I dug into it and found that we had the low cost of about $890, and the high was about close to $20,000. Every one of these projects right here includes the permit, of which the average cost, that we're paying the city building department was $260. A lot of these installations, a ton of these installations included an EV charger that we provided ourselves. We buy Tesla chargers by the dozen, we buy Wallbox ChargePoint chargers by the dozen. This adds another $500 to $700 that we built into these prices. And this average price also includes all infrastructure upgrades that we had done throughout the year, whether they were automatic load management devices, 200 amp panel upgrades, smart panels from companies like Span or Schneider. Here's a picture of a Span panel. We've installed dozens of these panels. They're pretty great. So $3,200 was the average installation cost that we did. And this is an investment in the environment, your convenience, and lower transportation costs. For example, how much would you pay to spend, or how much would you spend for a private gas pump at your house that would provide you gas at 70% off? And if somebody came to my house, knocked on the door and said, gas is $6 a gallon, but I'll give you gas. I can give you a way to get gas for $1.50 a gallon. All it's going to cost is $10,000. I mean, I guess I wouldn't do it anymore because I drive electric. But if I drove an internal combustion engine, if I could get fuel for that cheap, I mean, I would pay a lot. I think most people would pay a lot to get convenient, cheap gas at their house. So we're doing it the right way for our customers with city permits. There's a lot of contractors out there. We've actually spoken with a ton of customers in the past who thought that their contractors were providing permits. Like, oh, it's definitely apples to apples. Yes, they're providing a permit. And then when they actually dug into it, they came back to us later saying, actually, they're not going to, so we're going to use you. So definitely make sure you're providing or you're getting a permit for your installation. Now, there are lots of rebates and grants also to offset costs. City of Palo Alto has some good grants. City of Santa Clara has some good grants. There was a federal tax credit of 30% up until about a year ago. We're still trying to determine that because with the Inflation Reduction Act, there's a lot of benefits on there for electric vehicles and kind of home electrification upgrades. And it's still confusing as heck to figure out how this applies to electric vehicle charging and what can be done with that. But we'll figure it out soon. And most of these grants through the IRA Act are not coming into place until January 1st of next year. So we've got a little bit of time still to figure those out. 720. So City of Alameda has some good programs, and income qualifying residents can get some, up to $2,000 back as well for these. So PG&E in the City of Palo Alto rate plans, you can see kind of how much people pay for these things. There are time of use rate plans, which I definitely would recommend getting on. Kind of when I got my electric vehicle about close to 5 years ago, I was living in a little fourplex in San Jose and forgot to switch. I had a 120 volt 20 amp plug installed because I had no capacity for fast EV charging. And I forgot to switch over my electricity rate from just like the standard rate to time of use the first month that I got my vehicle. And my utility went from about $60 to about $260 that first month. And it blew my mind. And then I realized I hadn't switched to the time of use. So I switched it over, and my bill went from like 60 to 260 back to about $90 or $100. So if you're on the right rate plan, it's not going to add that much to your monthly fuel cost. And I drive a lot. Again, I've driven about 20,000 miles a year with walkthroughs and site visits and everywhere else. So definitely make sure you're on the electric vehicle time of use. City of Palo Alto also has a tiered rate plan. They are typically a lot lower cost than PG&E. They're as low as 14 cents a kilowatt hour. Tier 2 is 19 cents a kilowatt hour. So even the high tier is cheaper than PG&E. So if you're in Palo Alto, congratulations. You have an even bigger reason to drive electric. I'm going to skip this one, corporate chargers. Now, if you are in an apartment or a condo, we have done installations for people where our installation technically goes against the aesthetic requirements of the community, running a surface mounted conduit on the side of the building, that, if they wanted that pipe installed for something else, the HOA there would say no. But for electric vehicle charging, management is legally required to approve the project. Now, this project the request must be made in writing. Renter must pay for all costs. And there are some exceptions to the rule, but it's been I'm very thankful for this law. So if you're in multifamily housing, you're protected there. We can get a charge installed for you. If the alternative to the surface mounted conduit would either make it so that you could not install a charger, or that it would be a significantly slower charger, then we're allowed to put it in. And there are some really cool new options for apartment and condo residents. There are some smart outlets. So this is a company called Plugzio. There's a company called Go Power EV. Big fan of this Go Power EV smart outlet. For this little device, I actually run a 240 volt 20 amp circuit to this box. And if one person is plugged in, then with the fastest charge possible, they can plug into this middle 240 volt receptacle right there. So this actually is a level 2, provides level 2 charger, and you can plug in your personal mobile charger to this. Or if there were 2 residents trying to charge off this, they could plug into the 120 volt receptacles on the side of this. And this receptacle is the same one on this Plugzio. So Plugzio does something pretty similar, and Plugzio is a cool company as well. I'm just more familiar with Go Power EV, so that's what I'll be talking about right now. Like I said a couple of minutes ago, when I first got my Model 3, I was charging off a 120 volt 20 amp receptacle, which is this receptacle right here. I charged probably 8 months off of this thing, and it wasn't fast. I would have loved to have had a faster charger, but it was all I had, and it surprisingly worked pretty decently. I definitely plugged in my car as soon as I got home from work and let it charge until I left for work the next day. And every once in a while, I had to make a visit to a Tesla supercharger to top off my vehicle, but it works surprisingly well. And there's even mobile charging options out there. If you were, here's a Chevy Volt that will assume forgot to charge last night, and this company can come by and charge the vehicle enough to get to a faster charger. So there's some pretty cool options these days. And charging networks, like we mentioned earlier, Electrify America, Tesla, ChargePoint, EVgo. Right now, it's a little here. Let me go back one. Oh. Here, I'll talk about that in just a sec. Actually, no, as long as I'm on the side. So there's a really cool feature coming to electric vehicle chargers called Plug and Charge. So, and it makes Electrify America, ChargePoint, EVgo, other compatible chargers very similar to the Tesla charger. But one of the coolest things about the Tesla charger is when I'm on a road trip and I back my car in, all I have to do is take this cable out and plug it into my car. There's nothing else. There's no logging into an app. There's no swiping a credit card or telling the screen who I am. I plug in, and it charges. And it has worked that way since the beginning, and it's really, really cool. Imagine pulling up to a gas station and not having to swipe your credit card. You just take it out, plug it in, fuel your car, and then off you go. With a lot of the other stations, it's a little more involved with signing into them, but the plug and charge standard will make it so that when you drive up to Electrify America in your F-150 Lightning, all you do is take off the cable and plug it into your car, and there will be a little digital handshake. Car says, here I am, and it handles billing with that. And as long as you have the one account in your car, it'll work with Electrify America, ChargePoint, EVgo, any of the other compatible chargers, and will make charging significantly simpler. Like imagine, and I think going to a gas station is kind of painful these days. But imagine if every gas station you went to, every 76 or Mobile or Chevron, you had a different credit card, but and a different account to refuel your gas car. It's kind of how it is right now with a lot of the charging networks, and it's not how it will be very soon. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. If you're looking at getting an electric vehicle as well, and you're just kind of curious at how it's going to work with long distance driving, so I know we've talked a lot about home charging, and home charging is fantastically helpful, but I know a lot of people are concerned about long distance driving. PlugShare, you can see right here, PlugShare is the name of this app, allows you to search chargers nationally, definitely where you are. You could find any ones near your house today, or you could also find if there's chargers on the way to your favorite vacation destination, on the way to Disneyland, on the way to Tahoe, on the way to Oregon, or anywhere else. And if you like to go way into the middle of Idaho, you can find out if there's a charger over there. And then also in this app, you can select which type of vehicle you want to charge. So it can search for superchargers, CCS compatible chargers, CHAdeMO, J1772, Teslas, the old school Roadster chargers. It really helps you find the type of charger that you want. So using public charging networks, let's see, like I said, the future tech will allow Tesla-like public charging in the future. It's not quite there yet. So today, you definitely want to make sure that you have your ChargePoint account, you have your Electrify America account, so that it makes it easier to charge. Around here, I think in California, I know in California, we're allowed to charge by the kilowatt hour. But in other states, if you're going a longer road trip, there's some locations where you might have to pay by the hour for electricity because they're not allowed to sell electricity like a utility in there. Please know that not all public chargers will work properly. That's one of the probably better known issues these days. There have been a number of articles in newspapers recently talking about how people would take their electric vehicle out on a road trip and have a horrible experience of public charging and finding broken chargers and not doing it well. I would love to see an article focusing on somebody's third or fourth road trip after they figured out the kinks in the system, because I think that would be a much more accurate article. So charger compatibility, again, there's the Tesla chargers and there's the DC fast chargers. Tesla cannot charge off the DC fast charger, and vice versa. You can't pull a Rivian up to a Tesla charger and charge. They say that sometime soon Tesla's going to be opening up the network to non-Tesla vehicles, but we're still not quite sure how that's going to work. Future capabilities of home EV charging, I cannot wait for vehicle-to-grid chargers. And with vehicle-to-grid, that will allow you to use your car's large car battery in the case of a blackout of your house. You can do some time shifting of energy use. You can charge your car at night and use your car battery during the evening or during the day. Car companies oftentimes don't like this concept, since stationary battery use may compromise their battery longevity, but like the Ford F-150 Lightning is starting to allow bidirectional charging. I think the Hyundai EV6 is allowing slower bidirectional charging. A Lucid is going to opening up their car like crazy to allow 100 amp bidirectional charging, but it's going to be a table stakes feature, I think, within a very short period of time as well. Yeah, that's about it for that. Other future things, got pickup trucks coming, and they're finally on the road. F-150 Lightning, the Rivian Cybertruck's not here yet. We thought it was going to be the first one, but looks like it's the last. But these cars drive like a dream. I've driven the R1T a few times. It's amazing. I drove the F-150 Lightning a few months ago, and it was faster than my Model 3. Both vehicles were extremely compelling. And this is a picture I took while using hands-free driving on my car, so don't worry, I wasn't trying to be too unsafe, but I looked in my rearview mirror and I saw a Polestar, a Rivian R1T, and a Model X. back there. So it's fun to see like the three closest cars were electric vehicles. And then here's my Model 3 hip on the backside over there with my car driving itself down the road to allow me to take the picture. So conclusion, electric vehicles, you're part of this presentation right now, so I probably don't need to say this, but electric vehicles are no longer a gimmick. The benefits are substantial. There's lower operating costs, better driving experience, and they're much better for the environment. And the inconveniences of electric vehicle driving are rapidly disappearing. Our vehicles have longer ranges, there's easier charging, much better charging networks, and many more vehicle choices. So the future is here. And here's a little picture of one of our trucks a couple of years ago with my son driving a little miniature kid Tesla with his cousin. Any questions? Any challenges with anything I said? If you don't believe me.
Well, do you want verbal questions? Can you hear me?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so could you please say a lot more about why we don't already have bidirectional charging from electric vehicle batteries to homes? My understanding is that charging to the grid does involve some complications about utility worker safety on the general grid, but why can't we already charge homes from our car batteries?
That is a great question, and one that I wish I could answer. I am frustrated as well with that. Kind of similar to like a old school natural gas powered generator. If you just get a generator inlet in your house and you plug it in because you're hoping to power your house, you need to have a way to disconnect power from a way to disconnect your house from the grid, so that when your generator is powering your house, you're not backfeeding that power out to the grid, potentially shocking or killing a linesman who's working on restoring power to the neighborhood. So for bidirectional charging from an electric vehicle, there needs to be a very smart way to automatically disconnect power. So like the Tesla, if you're familiar with the Tesla Powerwall, every Powerwall or every battery system like that has a gateway on there where right here, you've got your utility meter outside, and then here's the loads inside your house getting power. Ideally, you'd have power here. You've got the Tesla gateway, so a line coming here, and this has some smarts inside that will automatically allow power to come in, or it will physically disconnect power so that you can't, if there's any power live over here, it's not getting back to the grid at that point. So I know like the F-150 Lightning is one of the very first bidirectional capable vehicles with their super cool, Charge Station Pro. Boy, I looked at that line diagram recently for how to get that hooked up in a house. That is a nightmare. It is a beast and a half of how to get that thing hooked up with black start batteries. And every bidirectional charger ideally would have at least a small, even 5 kilowatt-hour battery in the house, so that if you have to go to work or you're going to the grocery store, you're not unplugging your refrigerator as you leave the house. But yeah, bidirectional charging, I'm thrilled about the future with that. We actually got to take a look at the Lucid bidirectional charger recently. Now, we don't know exactly how they're doing it yet. They wouldn't share that much. And I don't think they'd kill me for saying I got to hold the bidirectional charger from them in my hand. But they did say it's a lot harder than you would think. Like from a functional perspective, it works today. But from a regulatory perspective, it sounded like that was the biggest issue with making it so that they knew that they were pushing the correct type of power. The 240 volt power in our house had 60 hertz of waves flowing up in the ground. I'm not an electrical engineer with that, but they need to make sure that the inverter is outputting the proper power that will match the local utility grid. And if you have a mobile vehicle like that, and the Lucid vehicle is doing it all on board, they need to make sure that they are able to output power properly to the location. But agreed, I think within 5 years, bidirectional charging is one of the 5 pillars that I'm most looking forward to with electric homes. And it is a very key part of the house.
I've got a question that's not necessarily the most charger specific, but I'm curious, you mentioned that working out the charger tax credits in the IRA and the Biden's environmental bill. And I'm curious if there's anything charging specific or just EV overall that you're interested in or curious about or sort of excited about from that bill, or questions that, you know, advocates and people who are curious about it and people who are getting involved in state level politics to do the implementation are like something you might pass around for people who are locked into that kind of.
So some of the credits that I've heard about, they've got something I think it'll do upwards like $3,000 or $4,000 towards panel upgrade credit if the panel upgrade is being done in conjunction with home electrification efforts. So I don't believe there's anything specifically for home electric vehicle charging, but like I mentioned, a lot of houses need infrastructure upgrades, whether it's a panel upgrade or a smart device that allows us to put a fast charger in a house that previously could not handle that fast of a charger, you know, and safely it'll allow it to have it on there, because if the EV charger plus the load of the rest of the house gets too high, it will either shut off the electric vehicle or ramp the charging speed down to an acceptable level. Some of those upgrades will qualify for upwards of 30% or, you know, some X dollar amount credit on there. And then electric or home batteries will have more of a credit on there. So still trying to figure it out.
Great, thank you.
And any chance that someone will, so Keen just asked if there's any chance that someone will force the electric vehicle manufacturers to standardize the charger connector system. And I don't think anybody's forcing them, but it seems like most manufacturers are standardizing on the CCS port in the US. That is the CCS for fast DC charging. So the J1772 definitely is a standardized port for home charging. And we actually, all the time, even for people getting Teslas, oftentimes they're asking for a home charger that will work with their Tesla today, but we don't know, their next vehicle is going to be a non-Tesla. So we're recommending to put in, you know, chargers like ChargePoint and, you know, Flow and Autel and companies like that, so that it works with their vehicle, and it works with their Tesla today, and it works with their Bolt or their Rivian tomorrow. And then how do we see things developing with regard to the electrical grid being able to support everyone electrifying their vehicles? I read one study recently saying that there is plenty of power today for charging millions and millions, like way more vehicles than we have on the grid as it is. It's just that it needs to be intelligently allocated. So there will be, I know, like with, I actually signed up recently for, let me see if I can find this app. It was like Silicon Valley Clean Power app on my phone. I logged in with my Tesla credentials. I logged in with my PG account on there. And I think I'm giving them permission to operate my EV charger when there is excess capacity on there. So in the future, I expect that we will just be plugging our car in, and we'll be getting, you know, credits, or at least we won't be getting charged excessive amounts for fueling. But we'll come home, we'll plug our vehicles in, and with a bidirectional charger at that point, if the grid needs a lot more power, the grid will take power from us for charging the car. Like recently with the Tesla Powerwalls, they have a microgrid in place where when we had those heat issues recently, they were paying people upwards of $2 or so a kilowatt hour to export their Powerwall energy to the grid. So that is what we will be doing with vehicles eventually. And except that, you know, typically there's more capacity on in the grid than we're actually using. I kind of think of it like reservoirs. I actually heard somebody from PG&E a couple of years ago say that the best battery that they had today was pumping water uphill to a reservoir when they had excess power available. And then in the daytime, when they need more power, they can just open up the floodgates and, you know, spin the turbines and make power from the power that they had used pumping water uphill. That will be electric. So in the not too distant future, rather than pumping power uphill when there's excess capacity, the utilities will be pumping power into our home batteries and our electric vehicles, and we'll get to use it as needed. And when they really need more power, we will give them permission, you know, to responsibly take power from our batteries and our electric vehicles to support the grid to make it so that we never lose power. And there's, oh gosh, the number of startups are right now working on stuff like this. It's a pretty exciting field to be in with this. Any more questions, or go on to agreements, disagreements? I think technology will save us with a lot of these issues.
Well, if I'm not taking somebody else's turn, I have a second question.
Please.
Okay. I saw a webinar recently where the case was made that no matter how cheap it is, that it's a bad idea to charge our electric vehicles at night because we're still using fossil fuel generation at those times, and that the best time that we need to arrange our society to charge vehicles is when there's excess solar on the system during the day.
Yes. I think I read a similar article to that, and I would agree, but I also would say there's not really a good way to
Whoops.
yeah, I'm not sure how we can incentivize that at this point. I know, like, I got a, because from my perspective, I mean, if the city or if the utility wants to take power from my vehicle, if they want to take power from my home battery, in certain times, I'm all right with that, because yeah, I mean, power is a very fluid thing in my mind with this. Yeah, I'm sorry, that's not really a good answer. I've talked with some customers in the past who want to make sure that, some people with solar, they want to make sure that they are using their solar themselves. And we want to make sure I'm charging in the middle of the day definitely is a great thing to do if you have the solar with that. But if you don't need to charge your vehicle right then, and you're pushing power back out to the grid, I know some people have thought like they're losing their green credit with that. But in my mind, I'm just visually seeing the power coming off their roof, flowing through their meter out to the grid, and immediately getting sucked up by their neighbor's house that has no solar on the roof. And that's a house that would have been, pulling power from the natural gas powered grid that now is getting power from your house because you made more power than you were using at that point. So I think the more solar that we can add, the better. And if that is, if we could look and see, truly what the excess times, after midnight, that there is not as much excess capacity at that point, and PG&E's having to spin up some of those inefficient plants, then definitely we should stop doing that.
May I chime in with Peninsula Clean information about Peninsula Clean Energy and kind of our approach to this question?
Excellent segue.
Please.
Yeah, so before I dive into more about Peninsula Clean Energy, just wanted to share and to thank you for that question and share that this is something that Peninsula Clean Energy is working on. And so right now, if you live in San Mateo County, you're likely receiving 100% clean electricity from Peninsula Clean Energy. The way that we do that is by purchasing electricity from clean sources like solar arrays or wind farms on behalf of our customers, which gets delivered to you through PG&E's power lines. And so right now we have a strategic goal to provide 100% renewable energy at each hour of the day, every day of the year. And so the way that clean energy accounting is done currently is on an annual basis. And so we purchase enough electricity to match our customers' demand over the course of the year. But with this goal, we are hoping to match demand and supply every hour of the day. And so with this goal, even if you were to charge your EV late at night, our goal is to purchase electricity from clean sources to meet your demand at that time. So yeah, happy to answer more questions about that, but wanted to share at least an exciting approach from Peninsula Clean Energy on that topic.
So in the middle of the night, that would need to be from stored electricity, right? From some storage medium?
Yeah, battery storage is a big part of the strategy, as well as power from geothermal.
Okay.
Right. Well, thank you for that question. Maybe now that we're on the slide, I can transition to talk a little bit more about Peninsula Clean Energy and our electric vehicle programs. Thanks again, Matt, for sharing your expertise with us today. I learned a lot from your presentation, and thanks to Irvin and Leo and the Actera team for inviting me to present. Next slide, please. Great. So as I alluded to, here in San Mateo County, our energy context is really different than it is in other places in the US and even in California. And so with Peninsula Clean Energy, our residents and businesses, schools, and other customers are receiving 100% clean electricity. And so because of that, really our next opportunity to further reduce greenhouse gas emissions is to electrify everything in our life, from our transportation. So an example being electric vehicles, as Matt discussed earlier, or electrifying our home through appliances. Next slide, please. And so to say a little bit more about Peninsula Clean Energy, we were formed just over 6 years ago when the county, as well as all the cities in San Mateo County, came together and decided that we wanted to be able to choose where we source our electricity from and to be able to purchase electricity that aligns with our values and our climate action goals. So really our vision is to build a sustainable world with clean energy for everyone. And how we do that is that we purchase clean electricity on behalf of our customers, and pass on a little savings to our customers. And so more specifically, we set our rates to 5% lower than what PG&E would have charged you. So even if you're on an EV rate, you'll save with Peninsula Clean Energy. Next slide. Great. And so I'd like to share a little bit of information about our used electric vehicle rebate. If you're currently considering purchasing an EV, all residents in San Mateo County can get up to $1,000 for a fully electric EV or $700 for a plug-in hybrid EV. And if you qualify based on your income, you can get even more incentives. So up to $6,000 for an electric EV and up to $5,700 for a plug-in hybrid EV. And the good news is that these grants stack with our other state incentives. And so definitely encourage you to check out Actera's resources on electric vehicles, as they have great programming around understanding all of the opportunities to save. Next slide. And I also wanted to highlight, if you're interested in electric vehicle charging infrastructure and access, that many communities are currently considering REACH codes. And REACH codes are local building codes that go and reach beyond the standards for safety and sustainability and health. And so local jurisdictions can adopt these building codes to encourage the electrification of buildings, which has many benefits, including reducing greenhouse gas emissions, as well as making buildings safer and healthier, as well as more comfortable as well. And so I mention this because an aspect of REACH codes also includes requirements around electric vehicle charging infrastructure. And so if you live in San Mateo County, as well as other parts of the Bay Area, your community may be considering adopting REACH codes or updating their current REACH codes. And so this is an area of interest to you. Definitely encourage you to see what your local city is doing. Next slide. Great, and that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions about Peninsula Clean Energy or any of our programs. And I thank you all for your time.
We'll have a little bit more time for questions in the end, but you guys can also put those in the chat and we'll get to them. And then thanks, Vanessa, for that useful information. I also wanted to tell you guys about Actera's focus on electric vehicle equity. Our focus right now is on the Cal Green Code update, which is a statewide policy, and their local cities' REACH codes. So we're gonna put a link in the chat if you are interested in helping us do EV equity. There's like a little Google form that you can sign, and we'll get in contact with you how you can help make it more equitable for everyone to access EVs and charging. And then we're also sponsored by Power Save Rewards. If you guys don't know, this is a program through PG&E. So when there's a flex alert because there's a heat wave, we just need to try to reduce our energy usage from 4 to 9, and you'll be eligible for a energy credit on your bill. So this is a way to save electricity and to avoid blackouts during a heat wave. So all you need to do is just go to powersaverewards.org and connect your PG&E account. And then you'll just get alerts on when there is a flex alert, and you can earn that energy bill. It's like a good credit, a good amount if you try to reduce your energy usage during that heat wave. And then we also want to let you guys know about our upcoming events. We have a Goodbye Gas, Hello EVs on Thursday, October 27th. Our presenting sponsor for that is Sunnyvale. And then we always have induction cooking classes 2 times a month. And there's one upcoming on Thursday, October 20th. It starts at 6:30 and it's like an hour. We have a professional chef come on a Zoom class to teach you guys about induction and just follow along with the recipe. They're pretty fun. So I think Leo put a link in the chat, so you guys can go to actera.org/events to sign up for those. And then I just want to thank you guys for your time. We look forward to seeing you at our Green at Home workshop, our next one for heat pump water heaters. So if you guys want to learn more about the rebates available for those and how to just install one, a little bit more information, it's going to be on October 26th. And then we're also going to put a link in the chat for the post survey, so you guys can give us feedback and just a little bit of what you learned today. We'd appreciate it. And then we have a little bit more time for questions. If anyone has some, you guys can come off mute, type your final questions in the Q&A, and we'll get to those. But if you guys, yes, go ahead, Geraldine.
Yeah, I'm sorry I got here late. If you already answered this, are cars more available now than I heard they were earlier?
Matt, you want to take that question?
I think so. I hear they are still pretty back ordered with electric vehicles. I know a lot of the really cool ones coming out, the F-150 Lightning, the Rivian, Lucids, you know, they're Teslas. You definitely can't walk up to a dealer and just drive off in them. But like for Tesla, I heard that they were backlogged a long time and they've been increasing their production capability. So they're starting to become more and more available, I think. I haven't looked recently, but that's what I've heard.
I think it also just depends on the model that you're trying to find. So some of the more luxurious EVs usually tend to have a markup of $5,000. Depends what the supply is at that specific dealership, but I would say like shop around to different dealerships to see what the different markups are, because in another dealership they could have a lower markup for the electric vehicle that you want. But yeah, there's a lot of Chevy Bolts in San Jose dealership. I've seen like 4 of them on the lot that are available, but yeah, it just depends.
Bolt or Volt?
The Bolt with the B, yeah, the 100% electric. All right, yeah, well, this is going to conclude our presentation. We'll send you guys a follow-up email with a post survey, and you guys can just reply there to anything else. And then we're also going to send you guys the YouTube recording. This was being recorded. So yeah, this concludes everything. And thank you guys for coming by, and have a good night.
Thank you.
Well, thanks,
Thank you.
everyone. Thanks, Urban. Thanks,
Yeah.
Leo. Thanks, Vanessa.